Today is a lore story perfect for the winter holiday season. Hey, welcome, I'm LeilaFox. Today's lore story is actually two stories put together. It's Quest of the Heart of Winter chapters 1 and 2. And we're going to find what this story is. It's going to have a plethora of some of your favorite champions, including Sir Nicholas and Lyssandra. Now, will they create more chapters to continue on this story in the future? Who knows? Let's check out Quest of the Heart of Winter from the Tolarian Lore Book of Champions. Far beyond the jagged peaks of the Mountains of Despair and the freezing waters of the Great Northern Sea lie the winterlands of Teleria. It is a cold, inhospitable domain of glaciers and snow and blood-chilling winds, where night reigns supreme and days are short. Few creatures dare to stray far into these frozen wastes, for grave dangers lurk just out of sight. The winterlands are home to Arctic beasts, undead, frost-skinned trolls, and mysteries best left forgotten beneath the ice. The Nord tribes that once ventured into the tundra sprawling along the borders of the winterlands had often witnessed strange shimmering lights across the night sky. These auroras, their shamans maintained, were signs of powerful arcane storms that swirled and raged somewhere in the very heart of winterlands. There, beyond the glaciers and the impassable cliffs, was supposed to be a font so pure that a single drop of its water could restore youth and cure ailments which would otherwise be beyond the skill of Teleria's greatest healers. But to find it, one would have to brave hundreds of miles of frozen wastelands, pass through blizzards that could turn any living being into a statue of ice, and fight their way through mighty Jotuns, whose strength was sworn to the protection of the font. Unbeknownst to the humans, the font's wonders were true, given to it by the blessings of the Arbiter and, by extension, Lumea herself. Its crystalline waters were light itself given form, and its power was far subtler and far-reaching than the Nor imagined. Alas, a source of life and a symbol of Lumea's love such as this could not have avoided the attention of her eternal foe, Siroth, forever. As the shadow spread across Teleria and his influence strengthened in every corner of the realm, Siroth worked through his minions and through gullible mortals to undermine the forces of good in the Winterlands. His warlocks conjured up plagues and hailstorms of black ice to descend upon the land. His undead thralls marched forth in shambling armies to battle the Jotuns. For centuries, the giants resisted valiantly, but as the Arbiter's power waned, so did their numbers dwindle. Those who did not perish fled south rather than be twisted by the shadow into an abominable parody of their former selves. The few champions still loyal to Lumea's cause had chosen to perform a ritual that encased the font in ice impenetrable to their foe before they too vanished without a trace. Slowly, life ebbed away from the winterlands. But even the longest of nights must end, and dawn always comes to banish the shadows. Lumea's faithful would not give up on the blessed font of their goddess, not when it was in danger of being corrupted by Siroth. It was none other than Sir Nicholas himself who left his frozen fortress to marshal mighty champions that would dedicate their life to all that was good in Teleria. And though the goddess's faithful were many, he knew that he would need to recruit a very specific band of champions to succeed, as was revealed to him in a vision of startling clarity. Far and wide did Sir Nicholas travel, from the valleys that lay near the Mountains of Despair where the dwarven army camped, to the lavish capital of Aravia, and to the shadowy thicket of Durham Forest. Guided by a vision, he called upon Lyssandra of the royal line of Aravia, Elain, whose service to the Arbiter obliged her to fight in Lumea's name where the need was greatest, and the Mountain King of the Dwarves to join him on the quest. Between them, these warriors shared many skills, both magical and martial, and together they ventured into the heart of the Winterlands. Many deadly perils awaited the champions. Beasts and foes without count beset them. Blizzards that drained every ounce of Sir Nicholas's magical prowess on merely ensuring the survival of his companions. But the worst was yet to come. The brave heroes had almost made it to the fort when an ambush was sprung upon them on a narrow mountain path. Scores upon scores of ice-bound corpses and skeletons burst from beneath the snow, crashing against the company like an unstoppable tide. Many undead tumbled down the mountainside, throwing into the bottomless chasm below by the dislodged rocks and ice boulders, but they would not relent. There was something, a malicious will directing them, yet it did not reveal itself. Step by step, Lumay's champions retreated, felling countless foes for every wound they took in turn. But they knew that it would not be long before they were overwhelmed. It was in that moment Elain darted forward, cutting her way through a dozen skeletal warriors and ordering the others to flee just as she fired an enchanted arrow into the slope above. The last Sir Nicholas and his companions saw of Elain was her defiant stand against the undead horde. Then an avalanche caused by the elven warrior's arrow swept everything off the path. Sir Nicholas and his companions barely had enough time to take shelter in the cave before the merciless wave of snow and rocks crashed against the entrance, blocking their escape. Although their hearts were gripped with sorrow and anger, Lumay's champions would not let Elain's sacrifice be in vain. They suppressed their grief and followed the twisting tunnel in search of a way back to the surface, their path illuminated by Lyssandra's spell. The cave that the company found themselves in was ancient, its walls stained with rime and ancient cracks. Intricate formations of glowing crystals sprung forth here and there, and the deeper Sir Nicholas's band of champions progressed, the more wondrous these became. And among these magical crystals, Lyssandra saw runes carved into the stone. Those belonged to neither Elvish nor Dwarven tongue, yet her long years of scholarship under the gaze of Arabia's finest tutors allowed Lyssandra to decipher the script. It spoke of the battle between the Jotun and the Horde of Darkness, of Lumay's chosen who led a final valiant defense and carried out the ritual that had encased the font in ice. These champions, the writing said, hid their shards so that only the pure of heart could find them. Together, they would once more have the power to wrest the winterlands from Siroth's grasp. Onwards into the depths of the cave they forged ahead, guided by the runes and a flicker of light that guttered on Lyssandra's palm. The tunnel kept on turning and winding and branching out into multiple narrow paths. Each could lead the unwary to a dead end or worse. But with Lyssandra's keen elven eyes finding and deciphering the runes, the company managed to find their way through this frozen maze. The champions marched for what seemed like hours, steeling themselves against the freezing cold. But at long last, they came upon a cavern so vast its vaulted ceiling disappeared from sight. Much of the chamber was taken by a massive ice that had frozen around the cavern's natural walls. Still, within that ice, the company could see two shards glowing in the darkness upon an altar of stone. While Sir Nicholas and Lyssandra debated on how best to reach the shards, the Mountain King stepped forth and shattered the glacier with a mighty cleave of his axe. Though bemused by his companion's graceless approach, the others could not argue with its efficiency. With the shards now in their possession, Sir Nicholas called upon the power granted to him by the Arbiter and the summoning altar that had been left untouched by the destruction of the glacier. In a brilliant flash of golden light, two champions stepped forth and bent their knee. An honorable knight clad in white armor, and a warrior that was half man, half bear, his strength evident even at a glance. The mysterious champions explained that they were warriors sworn to the protection of Lumay's font and led the Jotuns in battle against the undead before the strength of the giants was spent and the font had to be magically sealed. But now, with Sir Nicholas and his allies finally discovering the resting place, they knew the time had come to heed the goddess's call once more and raise their weapons against the minions of Siroth. Together, the company and their new friends made haste back to the surface. The journey was arduous, but the returned champions knew a direct way to the font, one that lay through the very heart of the mountain. Through tunnels overgrown with jagged crystals and through frozen underground lakes, Sir Nicholas's host battled past frostkin trolls and other vicious beasts that dwelled underground. Their determination was eventually rewarded with a gust of chilling wind that smelled of snow and ice and freedom at last. Alas, the forces of evil were waiting for them once more, and when the company emerged to a hidden plateau where the font lay, they came face to face with the mastermind behind their misfortunes. A massive figure encased in black armor, whose eyes burned with cold fire and whose body was pierced with shards of ice, stood before them. The few surviving undead paced and growled as they surrounded the champions, ready to lunge at them at any moment. But, worst of all, a creature that was once Elain stood at the Black Knight's side, pale and bloodless, with her eyes burning like eldritch flame, much like those of her new master. The noble elf warrior seemed a shadow of her former self, yet no less capable. Their righteous fury roused by the sight of what had become of their friend, the company prepared to do battle that would decide the fate of Lumay's font and their winterlands at large. And, were triumphant, perhaps Elain could be restored by the magic of the life-giving waters. Well, I have to say, there's so much that I thought was fun and that I enjoyed about this story. Like I had said in the beginning, is there's a bunch of our favorite champions in this, such as Sir Nicholas, we have Lyssandra, and they even introduced Stag KNight as well too. So I think it's a fun and how wide range the story became. And we find in this story it also includes Whirlum as being kind of the main villain, which I think is really interesting. It also helps to explain what happens with Elain and also Dark Elain, which I do have some of the stories as well too. So if you've never checked out the lore stories for Whirlum and for Stag KNight or even Dark Elain, make sure you're checking out my lore playlist so you can check out some of those stories as well, because I feel like they kind of tie into this quest of the Heart of Winter. And I don't know about you, but I would love if they did include more chapters down the road so we could see what happens afterwards. If they leave Dark Elain the way that she is, what happens when Sir Nicholas and the rest of the crew come up against Whirlum Frost King? That's some of the things I would love to know, and honestly, I would love if they made more chapters in the future. Leave me some comments down below, let me know what you think for Quest the Heart of Winter, and I hope you enjoyed this. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.